family secret was finally spilled in your family? 1. Found out my uncle is actually my brother. My mom had him when she was so young that my grandparents raised him. 2. My sister cheated on her husband throughout her entire marriage to the point that all 3 of her kids have different biological fathers. 3. When my mother fell ill and I took over her finances, I found thousands of pounds of gambling debt on her credit cards. Then I found adoption papers for a child she'd had before me that she'd never mentioned. Then another family member told me my dad didn't die in a car crash but committed suicide in prison. 4. My grandma didn't drive. I thought she couldn't, but it was just never discussed. One day when I was maybe 7 to 8, I'd been trying to get anyone to drive me to the store for candy. We were visiting my aunt and uncle. Grandma lived with them. They had Bit-O honey at the local store, which I could no longer get at home, but no one would take me to the store. Finally I said I'd just ask Grandma, and my cousin chimes in with, "Grandma can't drive." "Oh, you bet your sweet ass I can drive. They just don't let me." Grandma had overheard and she was in high dudgeon. But that's all that was said about it, and my aunt finally took me to the store, so I forgot about it. Years later, when I'd just gotten my license, I asked my mom what was up with Grandma not driving. She explained that during Prohibition Grandma bootlegged alcohol for moonshiners. She was very successful at it. She was so successful at it that when the moonshiners were finally busted, even though the revenuers never caught my grandma, her license was suspended by the state to never be reissued. Later in life she was told she could petition for it back, but it came with an admission of guilt or some such. She told him to go to hell. 5. My great-great-grandfather was exiled and banned from Missouri for being a sheep thief. 6. After my grandfather passed, we found out he had fathered a child when he was posted in Italy during World War II. He never knew. His mother intercepted any letters from the Italian girl. He came home, met and married my grandmother and had 4 children. I forget who in the family found out and how. It's crazy to think we have a whole Italian family out there. 7. My aunt wasn't my grandfather's child. He met my granny when my aunt was a very sick infant. She had polio and wasn't expected to survive. My granddad married my granny so she could get on his insurance and move to an area that had proper medical support. My aunt was the first infant to survive open heart surgery at Yale New Haven Hospital, and although she had to be in leg braces most of her childhood, she had a great, although not long enough, life. My granddad loved her like she was his own, and I never knew until she went to her bio dad's funeral when I was a teenager. 8. Relative did not just fall off a bridge with her baby, she jumped. It seems obvious in hindsight, but they reported it differently both in the news and to younger family members. 9. My grandmother recently died. She was famous in our town for her amazing cooking/catering, in particular her turkey dinners. Notably, her gravy was absolutely amazing. So delicious. She had a heart attack several years ago and her near-death experience convinced her to share some of her secret recipes with me, all except for her gravy recipe. When she died this spring, I was going through her pantry and found an entire bucket of KFC gravy mix. She was literally using KFC gravy mix as a base to make her incredible gravy. Huge scandal. Lamau. 10. I started having problems with my teeth. Spontaneous abscess that resulted in multiple root canals. My dentist did some looking into what the cause might be and found some really odd abnormalities with my incisors, roots and nerves, the teeth that had been afflicting me. So he sent out requests for help to a couple of professors he knew in the field. When my next appointment came up, he was really quiet for a bit before verbally stumbling about. It turns out that what was happening with my teeth was a classic sign of inbreeding, and he was super uncomfortable giving me the news. I brought it up to my mom and she just was like, "Oh well, yeah. Didn't you know? WTF? Question mark. Of course I didn't know. Exclamation mark. Turns out that not very far back in the family tree, several of my relatives decided that it was a good idea to get married to one another, and no one bothered to mention it, ever. The small town where I live is 85% my relatives. No joke. I hadn't even met all of them. That's how many there are.